Hey everyone, welcome to Live with Cami Wanis. And if you are listening to us on our podcast, welcome to Homeschool Success with Cami Wanis. I am so excited for all the dads today. Woo woo! We're going to talk about homeschool dad and being a homeschool dad with Joel Evan here today. I am so excited because Joel and I have been keeping in touch for several years now, and we have a connection outside of the homeschooling world. But also, I've just been watching him grow and grow and grow, and I'm so excited about this because he has become not a always been a super amazing in the health industry and just really getting people healthy and getting people strong and fit in both mind and spirit and body. But he's really focusing on fathers right now, and I absolutely love that. And that is what we're here to talk about today, because guess what, dads, you are hugely important to the homeschool process and your family's homeschool journey and your homeschool success. It is so key that the dads be super involved, and not saying you have to be there every minute of every day. And Joel's going to talk about that, but you definitely need to be a key member of the entire culture, because remember, what we talk about is creating a culture and environment where love of learning is high all the time. And we can only do that if it's a whole family unit. And Joel has just been doing such an amazing job. You guys, he knows exactly what this is about. He homeschools his two boys. He's a 15-year veteran, first responder. He is a Kaji Kembo black belt. That's how I know him. My son is in Kaji Kembo. We're in the same dojo and under the same great grandmaster. And so he's ahead of our time, but we've connected through that. And he is really about personal growth and making sure that dads show up for their family and how they can help contribute. And you guys, he's got such amazing results in this area. I've really watched this family grow and really embrace homeschooling, and they are so incredible. So, Joel, can you please share with us a little bit about your journey, and then how you got started in homeschooling, and just how you feel about being a homeschool dad?
Yeah, well, Cami, thanks for the introduction. And you can see right now I'm living the epitome of the homeschool life. I actually didn't know this was going to happen. I usually like to do podcasts in my office, with my bookshelf, just like you. But right here, the background here is the Boise River. And so I have family in town, and I want to make it happen for everybody. So I can be here for you and show up and be present. But then as soon as I get done with this interview, I'm going to go back with my family and that's in town. So that's one of the big benefits, obviously, as you know, is homeschooling. And I'll tell you about my journey, but also, you had mentioned a lot of things in my introduction, and I think it's good to give people context. So, in my life, having been, a 15-year veteran in some of the, I'd say, most dangerous areas, I worked in Oakland, California for 6 years as a police officer, and then in San Francisco. Anybody that knows Oakland right now, I just saw right now, I think they were out of 100 of the most dangerous cities, they ranked like number 32 under Bogota, Colombia, I think. So anybody that knows Oakland, a 5-year career there, you hear a lot of people say it's like a 20-year career somewhere else. It's just so busy. There's so much activity happening. And it's true. So I did that for many years, and then I was let go from San Francisco PD in 2021 over the mandates. And I'm not here to talk about that, but that led me on a journey. And I just want to say, prior to that, I had done multiple life coaching certifications, holistic health certifications. I love to grow, I love to learn, and I love seeing people transform. And so that has always been something that's deeply inside of me. Now, the one thing that I was missing, my health was good, my career was good. The one thing that was really missing was my marriage, and my fatherhood was a missing component in my, mind, body, spirit. And I could never figure it out. And I think a lot of guys can relate to this, because if you're a high achiever or you're a go-getter, that's what I am. I love to learn, hire coaches, and learn from the best. But no matter what I did 4 years of therapy. No matter what I did, I could not figure out my marriage. It would always be like a rocky marriage, I would call it. Like 1 week was good, 1 week was bad. And I'm like, how come I can just never get some stability? I have so much success in other areas of my life, but it doesn't transcend into fatherhood, and it doesn't transcend into my marriage. And in fact, my kids, they eat organic. They never got spanked, and they would kick me. They would spit on me. We would get in arguments on a regular basis, and I literally just was like racking my. I'm like, I've done everything. And a couple of years ago, my wife challenged me, and she said, "Joel, you need to figure this out. You need help." And I was kicking and screaming, and I said, "No, I don't." I said, "I don't need to hire another coach. I've done all that I possibly can. 4 years of therapy, neurofeedback, gut protocols, everything you can think of. Read the books by Daniel Siegel. Went to the parenting seminars by Ralphie Jacobs. Name it. I did it." And I said, "You're the problem, and so are the kids. There's nothing else I can do." Seriously. And she said, "No, I think you need to go work with some of these men's coaches and stuff." And I said, "Okay, fine. I'll do it to appease you." And Cami, in about 1 month of being with this men's coach, who I figured was going to tell me, "Joel, you got this down. It's your wife is the problem." After a month of working with them, I realized that I am still a giant butthole. I won't cuss on your show, but I'm a butthole, and I got a lot of room to grow. And that lit a fire up under my butt, and I haven't stopped since, because I realized how how much change one person can make in a family. And a lot of and again, this is someone who did 4 years of therapy, who has all the life coaching certifications, best-selling author. I thought I had it all, and I realized that I was missing something. And when that happened, I went all in on my family for the first time. I made them the priority. I stopped making my successes and what I needed to achieve and money. And you hear a lot of guys say, "Oh, I work so hard so I can provide for my family. I love them." I don't buy that anymore. I don't buy that anymore, because I was that guy. And I tell guys right now, stop telling me you're going to die for your family and just go out and start living for them. Like, why don't you try that first? And so my story was a real pain to purpose story. And then after working and doing this work for over a year, I ran into a lot of guys telling me they had the same problems in their marriage. I'm like, well, I actually turned mine around pretty rapidly in like 3 months. And you never stop. You never stop. It doesn't just stop the work. It continues. But I changed it around dramatically in 3 months. My kids, our relationship is so good. And what I've learned is that marriage is a skill, and so is fatherhood. And most of us are missing the skills. And I asked myself, could I teach this framework to other guys, or was I just lucky? But it's not true. There is frameworks, there are systems, there's things you can do. I don't think therapy is the answer, and I've done it everything, guys. I swear I've done everything. I think it might be good for some people, but I don't think it never moved the needle for me to where I am now. And so I tell everybody that because I want them to give hope. And the last thing I'll say is, everyone says you can't change a person, and that's 100% true. You'll never be able to change your wife or your husband or your kids. They have to change. They have to want to change. But here's the interesting thing. When I went through my own transformation and journey, I never asked my wife or kids to change. Not once. I took 100% ownership for the family. And guess what I learned? Just like in the military or in police work, there's a famous quote by the Navy SEAL Jocko Willink, who has several great books, Extreme Ownership. And he says, there's no bad teams, there's just bad leaders. And I truly believe that. If your team, your family is not on the same page, if you're having dysfunction like I had, guess what? It's a leadership problem. It's a leadership problem. And the leadership's the problem, and leadership's the solution. That's the good news. But there's a leadership problem. And your team, they're not understanding the message for some reason. They're not getting it. It's your job as the dad to be that leader, to step up and guide them. That's your job. You said you were going to do that from day one, period. I don't care if your dad wasn't the same person for you. Maybe there's parts of my dad that he wasn't there for. I had to learn, but it's your job to figure it out. Extreme ownership, 100% responsibility. I put the burden on myself for my family, the love, the joy, the gratitude, the good things, the bad things. It's all on me. And when I took that mentality, guess what? The culture in our home changed. I never asked them to change. Guess what? Their attitudes changed. We started setting new standards for ourselves. In our home, our culture, our unit, we don't do certain things. This is how we act as a family. But guess who has to act first? Dad. Dad's got to be the leader first. And so by just me changing, guess what? My wife changed. My kids changed. They fell into my rhythm that I was setting the new standard. So that was a mouthful, but hopefully that gives you guys some context of where I'm at. Cammy, sorry, I lost audio. I wasn't able to hear anything you said, but apparently my audio's still coming in. Let me move slightly here and see if my phone is overheating and this heat could be the issue. And if anything, I'll just try to refresh and come back in here really quick if that's all right. Still can't hear you for some reason. Cammy, can you hear? You can hear? You can hear me? Yeah, I'm not quite sure here what's going on. Um, Unable to hear anything. Let me see. And what we can do, Cami, if this continues, is if there's any questions or anything I can ask, you can type it in the chat. I'm happy to answer, and we can always re-record the actual podcast next week if that's better. But I'm happy to answer any questions just because I can't visually or I can't hear anything coming through, unfortunately. So, but I'm happy to answer any questions, or I can even go through some of the questions that you have written out, whatever you'd like for at least today's show. But I'm happy to come back on and do an entire fresh new episode. So, okay. So, what are some of the issues that arise when dads aren't participating? Well, here's the thing. When dads aren't participating, what we see um, is so many. There's so many things. Number one is that your wife is going to become quickly disenfranchised. Okay, and so that's the big thing. And so what I see a lot, and I know with my wife that this was a big issue as well, right? And so when a dad is taking a backseat role, which I did for a long time, not because I didn't want to play a role. I felt I have my own childhood wounds and my own reasons that what I bring into my marriage, right? And a lot of guys do as well. And there were many times where I felt like my opinion didn't matter, right? So then I just became apathetic and I said, well, do whatever you want then. And I'll just support your decision. But guess what? That ain't leadership. Your wife doesn't want to hear that. She doesn't want to be told she's always right. She actually doesn't know. And she's trying to make the best decision. And there unfortunately has to be some honest conflict. And I'm not a person, I see a lot of us as, especially you think of us as a cop. Oh yeah, what are you talking about? You love conflict. No, I don't. But cops are unique in that they're the only profession of people I know, one of the only ones that will run towards bullets. But when it comes to their marriage, they run away from conflict, which is really interesting. A lot of them do. I'm not saying everybody. A lot of them do, though. I think there's a specific archetype that I see in a lot of first responders and heroes out there. And so what typically happens too is they've been helping people for so long, firefighters, police officers, that when they get home, they don't want to help any more people. They don't want to make decisions. That's a problem, guys. And so your wife needs you to make decisions. You're the leader, like I mentioned earlier. You're the leader. You got to step up. And so one of the biggest things that I see, and I've done a lot of studying also of women, masculine and feminine polarities, and we see this a lot with women right now, and we see a lot of women that I believe they're in more of this alpha masculine personality. Why? Because they've had to take on that role, unfortunately. They've done it in many ways. We've seen women's rights change over the last, the middle of the century, which is a positive thing. But now we've got more women in the workforce. So they're taking on some of the same roles that guys are doing, and they do it quite well. But the problem is they don't come back into that beautiful, radiant, divine feminine enough. They don't come into that creative that they are. They don't have that downtime to do that. And so as guys, there's actually ways that you can help support them and bring them back into that feminine. And when they're living in that space, that's where they truly belong. It's fine to be in the masculine a little bit and then come back out. And it's the same thing for guys. Guys have to have that beautiful duality, right? You see a guy living too much in the masculine, which probably was me, too much go getting, success, money, success, conquer, kill. That's great for a while. But what about I got to come back into that creative state too and be supportive to my wife? You see a guy being too feminine, also a huge problem, as we know. So I see a lot of that, and when the women don't feel supported, it's a big problem. And then they get stressed, they get nitpicky, they get moody, and then you're just on fire. Now you're creating a lot of internal conflict on a regular basis, and that just steeps over time. And then what do we see? We see divorces, we see a friction in the relationship. And a lot of divorces, you'll hear them say, this just came out, Forbes 2024, most common reason for divorce was lack of commitment. I don't believe that, though. I don't think people are they're lacking commitment. They're lacking commitment because they've tried so many different things, and at some point they just say, screw it, I give up. I don't know what else to do. That's when the lack of commitment comes in. And so I think that's a big issue. And at the end of the day, guys, we see this again. So you've got women in the workforce, right? The other big problem when dads aren't participating, right, is that women have taken care of the boys, right? I have two boys, and dads are typically at work 8 to 5. And so who's supporting your kids 95% of the time? Mom. Who's supporting your kids when they go to school, if they go to school? I know this is a homeschool show, but you got a lot of people that are interested in homeschooling that are still taking their kids to school. Who takes care of the kids at school? Women. Women teachers. When are they ever getting fed a masculine role model? Very little. Very little. And that's a problem. And we're seeing that problem now play out currently in many different ways. So there's a huge problem when dads aren't participating and setting up. And the last thing I'll say is this, is how do you expect your son or daughter, I think about this all the time, how do I expect them to love a woman and treat a woman and go out and be resilient and go out and try hard and fail and get jobs when they aren't being led by you as the example? It's huge. They've got to learn. They got to learn from you. Just as much as they got to learn from your wife. Yeah. You hear me okay? Let's not just look at it as I'm going to give you two answers, but I don't want to look at it out of the lens of just a homeschool dad, right? Because at the end of the day, be a great dad, be a great leader. That's it. If you and that will transcend into whatever you do, whether you're a homeschool dad or not. But I'm gonna at the end of the day, I think one of the biggest messages I want to leave men, fathers, husbands is leadership. That's the key. That is the key. And I'm gonna tell you why. And I've harped on it a lot from the beginning because what I see in a lot of relationships, whether it's your fatherhood or your marriage, is there's a lack of leadership. And when there's a lack of leadership, there's a lack of trust. And so a lot of guys will come to me and say, "But Joel, man, there's no connection between my wife and I. There's no intimacy. We don't know how to communicate." You're right. Those are all downstream problems from what? Leadership. Your wife will never, if she can't trust you, she'll never, she'll never communicate with you, and then there will be no intimacy or anything. So the key is leadership. So you've got to go there. How can you be a more effective leader then? Lead by example. Start being an honorable man. Start being a man, a worthy man that attributes positive things, meaning that you have amazing, your habits are dialed in. So that you eat well, you take care of your body, that you read every day, that you're learning, you're feeding your mind, that you're being of service to your wife, that you're doing acts of service. Take on take on powerful habits, and that will create an amazing leader. So that's number one, is be an amazing father, whether it's homeschool or not, right? Now the second thing to being an amazing homeschool dad is, well, and I hear this a lot in men that maybe are resisting homeschooling, or they think like, oh, I don't know, like if that's really the route. And I would say have an open mind, right? Because I'm a very big student of history. And so I think a big thing that comes up for a lot of guys is we're doers, and we're not good at being. And so we can't imagine our kid at homeschool. What do you mean he's only going to learn for 2 hours a day? And then what else does he do? Play? Well, guess what, guys? I just had an interview with Brittany Anderson, and we were talking about play and how kids actually learn 30% more memory retention through play. Bet you didn't know that. Jonathan Haidt just wrote an amazing book called The Anxious Generation. Every guy family should be reading that book. Cell phones right now are destroying even though I'm on a cell phones right now are destroying our family units. They're breaking us up in so many ways. When we look at dopamine addiction, when we look at what's happening to the brain, when we look at depression, anxiety, all these things, it's taking away. And so um so go out and what you'll hear in that book is Jonathan actually shares a lot of stories about how play and more recess is actually beneficial to these kids. They actually need that. They can't go from recess, I'm sorry, lunch, which is scarfing down a sandwich, and then also trying to get a little bit of play in and then go back to class. They don't have enough downtime. And he actually says you need a second recess, one recess just so they can eat, and then the other one so they can actually go play. It's really, really important. You're seeing this in the inner cities like New York and the suburbs as well. So I would say have an open mind and ask yourself too. I ask myself, I'm a college graduate. I went to school, and I think it's a freaking joke. I hope my kids don't want to go to school, because all you learn is how to be a cog in the wheel. You learn how to be a robot and go out and that's fine if you want a traditional job. I'm not saying it's wrong, but I want my kid to be a thinker. I want him to be a free thinker, and I want him to do the things that he wants to do. And that doesn't mean, do you think being 8 hours, and if you look at schooling, the schooling system and why it was invented, guys, go back into the history. It was invented for one reason. I mean, well, maybe a multiple reason. One reason is you can brainwash an entire country through teaching them whatever you want to teach them. That's number one. And then the second thing that schools are are really good is that they're good at babysitting. Because when the industrial revolution happened, we had to figure out a way to keep kids occupied for 8 hours while the parents went to work. So that's really all it is. I would much rather put my kid in an environment where he learns for 2 hours. And think about yourselves, guys, at work. Most men only work for about 2 hours probably a day anyways, and then the other 6 hours of their work is they're they're doing office cooler talk and meetings. Nothing's really being accomplished. So I'm a big fan of unschooling and free and wild and free. And so I think there's a lot. I would just say be open-minded. And then the last thing, I keep saying the last thing, but I promise this is the last thing, is be present. As a homeschool dad, I work out of home now, out of my office. And so my kids are around all the time, all the time. And I have an office and they barge in. And I'm just like, man, I'm doing a podcast here, like, yeah, please get out of here, And I've had to learn how to balance and interact with them, even though I've got work and I've got all this time. So I would just say presence is so key, and you have such a good opportunity to be more present and be around your kids, even if you're an at-home worker. But it's not easy. It's challenging. But I would say come back to presence as much as possible and enjoy those generous moments with your kids, because they're going to go away pretty quickly. And by the way, I think I heard your mic, so I might be able to hear audio again.
Yes, I think you can now. I think it was my fault. I think I actually turned my microphone up. Okay. I'm so sorry about that, you guys.
That's awesome, because I can't hear you now. I did feel my phone was very hot. I'm like, oh, it must be the phone overheating, and I lost it.
I'm so sorry, you guys. I actually turned my microphone off when I was typing for a second because I didn't want to interrupt you talking, and then I forgot to turn it back on. So that's all the things we learn how to do, right? It happens, man, when we're live. That's just how it goes. So no worries, you guys. What I was saying is that make sure to go back and listen to the live I did a few weeks ago on being the example, doing what's yours to do. It's really, really important. That's one of the most important talks I've ever done, because it really is important that you do what's yours to do. That's for the moms and the dads, but for sure we're talking about dads today, and that's what Joel's message is being a leader, doing what's yours to do. And so, one of the things that I really love, and I know I connected with you talking about this live today while I was sitting in the dojo and my son was in class, and I was thinking about you. I was just thinking about mentorship and thinking about being great mentors, and not only being great mentors for our kids, but also because you can be a great mentor for your kid. That's what Joel's talking about, is taking that ownership, being that example. By doing that one thing, you don't have to be great to yourself. You don't have to be like, oh, I'm already successful, blah, 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 whatever. Your act of learning, your act of being in pursuit of growth shows them that example. I love that. And then so I was thinking about Joel, and I was like, Joel, we got to connect, man, because I want to know how parents, and I know you feel me on this because we are both the same, picky about who our kids are mentored by, because we only choose great mentors for our kids. So how can parents choose great mentors for their kids that are outside of themselves? So outside of parents, how can we, when they're outside of us, how can we choose great mentors? Because I know, man, I've kicked a lot of mentors to the curb.
Yeah, I mean, I tell you what, I mean, I'm always seeking new mentors, and I'm humble enough to know that I don't know what I don't know. And so I'm always inspired by my mentors have always introduced me to other mentors, and my network has expanded dramatically in the last 3 years. And that's because I'm always open to learn, and I may not always agree, but I want to, well, what is this person saying? Maybe that'll work. But to give you just a short and quick answer, I think that one of the easiest things you have to ask yourself is, what are your values? What do you stand for? What are your top 3 to 5 values? What are they? Most people I know haven't even thought about them. And I think it's a huge problem, because we're talking about mentorship, but if you don't know what your top 3 to 5 values are, guess what? The world's going to give them to you. They're just going to tell you what yours are. And when the world comes down on you and the government starts doing things and saying, you know what, we're instituting a left ear tax, and next week we're going to cut off your left ear if you don't give us $10,000. If you don't know what your values are and what you stand for, and if you don't agree with that, you're just going to be like, okay, I guess I have to do that, because you don't know what you stand for. And when I interviewed Jennifer Say from Levi's, she was the CMO of Levi's. She was set in line to be the first female CEO. She's a behemoth. I mean, beautiful, smart, charismatic woman, took from the bottom to the top. And she told me they fired her over the mandates. Actually, they didn't fire her over the mandates. I take that back. They fired her because she put out a couple of tweets and they didn't like her tweets. They said, Jennifer, you have to stop doing this. And her tweets were very innocuous. She said, she wasn't a vaccine person. She just said, I really think schools should be open for kids. There's no reason they shouldn't be. And she was just looking at basic data. She goes, I'm not even I'm a marketer. But she said, when people were asking her and she was about to lose her job, they were going to fire her. And they did. She had friends and colleagues and they came up to her and they said, Jennifer, why do you want to die on this hill? Just like go with the flow. Like it'll all pass. And she said, they said, is this the hill you're going to die on? And she said, do you even have a hill? And they couldn't answer. Cammie, they couldn't answer. They had no, she goes, you don't even know what you stand for. You don't even know what hill you would die on. And so that's the key is first know what your values are. What do you stand for? And if that will be your guiding North Star when things get rocky and when things are good, you'll know, like, is this align with who I say I am and what I want for my family and what we espouse to be? And if it does, and that mentor, that person is clicking off some of those values, I think you've got a pretty good, that's a pretty good barometer, I would say, of how to pick a good mentor. And your intuition is always your best source. We are guided by this sixth sense, if you will. And there's tons of research on that. If you read The Gift of Fear by Gavin DeBecker, he talks about this. And he says every victim of a crime knew that they were going to be a victim of a crime. And he interviewed multiple, like hundreds and thousands of victims. And they all said, he said, what happened right before you got attacked? And they said, oh, I saw so-and-so, and it kind of gave me a spidey sense, but I didn't do anything. Got it. Every single victim of a crime knew that. So I would always say, too, trust your intuition, moms and dads. Like, you know what's great and right for your parent. And if you've got a little ickling feeling that says, I don't think there's something off about this person, I guarantee you're right, and I would trust that instinct 100%.
Absolutely. I believe that 100%. When we were at a different dojo for the first 5 years of Kenyon's martial arts journey. And then we walked into the dojo where he's at now, where Joel got his black belt. And we were there for about, I don't know, like 15 minutes. And I said, man, we're home. We're home. This is it. We're home. Like, this is it. And this is what I wanted. And it's so key. I love what Joel said about I love what he said about really having your values and knowing what hill. I remember that episode. I listened to that one podcast. It was so incredible. And knowing what hill you have to die on, what you stand for is really, really important. I call it, and in leadership, and Joel, I know you've heard this before, we call it a fruit check, right? Have a fruit check. What does that person have the fruit on the tree that you want your kids to have, right? So are they honorable? Are they humble? Are they, growing? And that's one thing that I know you and I both love about Great Grandmaster David Amakuchi is that he is constantly growing. He's constantly growing. He's seeking out more information. He's constantly looking to get better. And that's what I definitely want my son to be around. So you guys, this has been such an amazing conversation. Thank you, Joel. Thank you all for bearing with me on my little mishap there. So I've only been doing this for over 3 years. It doesn't matter. You'd think I'd learn by now, but it's all good. But thank you so much, Joel. I really appreciate you hanging in there with me and taking time out with your family to do this for us. And Joel, I know that you have offered a couple of opportunities for us to get in touch with you and things like that. Can you share with us about how we get in touch with you and also your free book too? Or your book we can get
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I don't have a landing page like I probably should, but here's the deal. If anybody if we talk about alignment and being true to your values, and one of my mentors, David Meltzer, said, nothing vibrates faster than the truth. And I think that's true for me, because I know that when if I am not connected in my truth and aligned in it, then I'm creating resistance in the unifield. Okay. So if any of you felt like, man, I vibrate with this guy, I like what he's saying, listen, I'm happy to help you for free. Seriously, there's no strings attached. It's my joy to be of service and help you. I've had mentors and people help me, and I always remember that. So if you're struggling in your marriage or your fatherhood, my wife works with couples as well. I'm happy to jump on a 15-minute call and give you kind of like a blueprint of what I would say. Try this, do this for free. And I think that 15 minutes will be very powerful, believe me. And there's no lead magnets or anything. I'm going to give you as much knowledge as I can in that time. So reach out to me and happy to help. The second thing is I have a book called Ignite, and I wrote this book a year ago, and the subtitle is on holistic weight loss and unlocking your full potential. But don't make a mistake about it. I have a very big holistic background, and I'm not here to talk about weight loss because that's just like one thing. And I don't even think that's that important. I really believe this book was more about health in general. Like, how do you rebalance the body? We talk about the first two chapters are about mindset, clarity, vision. Then I talk about how to detox the body. Then I talk about nutrition. Then I talk about how to exercise 10 minutes a day and still build muscle for all those go-getters and entrepreneurs who don't have time. I haven't set foot in a gym, guys, in my son is almost going to be 11 years. I haven't set foot in a gym and I'm still very healthy because I prioritize health only 10 minutes a day. And it's possible for you if you know what you're doing. So I talk about that. And there's eight chapters. It's not too heavy of a book. If you want that, reach out to my email, info@joelevancoaching.com. I'm very active on Instagram, Joel@joelevancoaching. If you guys reach out to me, you tell me you heard me on this podcast, send me your address. I'll get you the book for free. And I hope it helps you and ignites your life.
You guys, the book is incredible, and Joel really does have a huge background in holistic and health in general. And you guys should definitely check out his podcast. It's so incredible. Some huge, great leaders in all kinds of mindset, success, health industries. Huge leaders in those areas are on his podcast. I always really find so much value out of that. So thank you so much, Joel, for joining us today. And I hope you guys got enough out of Joel, and who needs to listen to me anyway? So I'm glad you guys got what you needed, and for sure get in touch with Joel because I guarantee you will not be sorry. All right, you guys, talk to you again next week. Bye-bye.